Hello everybody and welcome to this session. My name is Jan Dubiel. I'm the Director of Early Years for AISL, Harrow International Schools and Bilingual Kindergartens. I have been involved in early childhood education for over 30 years as a teacher, as a policymaker, as a writer, as a presenter, but I'm also a parent and a grandparent. So everything I say comes from a multitude of perspectives, both personal and professional. So what I want to talk to you today is about your role as parents and the role that parenting plays in children's learning and development. You are and will always be the child's first and most enduring educator. Just because you may not be qualified as a teacher or have an official qualification, you are still involved in the process of educating, nurturing and developing your child. And what we know from research is that the impact of the environment the child grows up with and the types of parenting that they experience have a massively significant impact on the way they develop, and that complements what happens to them in professional institutions like schools or preschools or nurseries or playgroups and so on. So in this session, I want to talk about brain development, what we know about the science of learning, and particularly what you do as parents and how that impacts positively on a child's neurological growth. We know that this period from birth to about 7 is this incredibly significant period of neurological growth, and throughout your life you will never be as receptive and developmental as you will at this point. So what happens and also how it happens and the context in which it happens is critically important. And as time goes on, we're finding out more and more about the impact of those particularly early experiences. So one of the things we want to be really clear about is ensuring that children have the right kind of experiences early on. And what we mean by that is experiences which build that brain development. Experiences which are warm and loving, experiences which understand the role of language, experiences which support the child's interest but introduce them to new and different things, experiences that make a child feel warm and valued and loved and cared for, because actually, again, from neuroscience, we know that those are the perfect conditions for optimal neurological growth. So one of the things what we want to start off by saying is that these kinds of experiences that we're talking about don't necessarily need to be massively complex or massively contrived in any way. When we talk about the quality of experiences, in some cases the experience themselves might be an ordinary everyday thing, but it's how we shape it and how we understand it that makes it so important. So for example, you could be in the park and you could lie down on the grass and look at the clouds and talk about the different shapes you see and the figures you see, and you might start making up stories or making up images that you see in the clouds. The language and the interaction and the conversation around that is what makes that a really good experience. Or you might be putting washing out on the line and you might talk about how the clothes are really wet because they've been in the washing machine and how they get drier over time. You might take the washing down and sort them into socks and different items of clothing or different colours of different types of clothing. Again, that's a very ordinary activity, but the interaction that takes place, listening to your child, talking to your child, modelling language to your child, make that a really valuable experience. Or you could be preparing food in the kitchen and talking to the child about how things feel and how they smell and how they taste and how you have to be careful with different implements and how you're going to cook them in different ways. Again, what you're doing is enriching the child's lives with experience that you're making it clear matter to that child. So the idea of language, the idea of the warmth of interaction are the central components of all of this. So in future sessions we'll be unpicking this in a lot more detail. We'll talk about the specifics of brain development and the different kinds of approaches to optimizing that we use as parents. We'll also be talking about the importance of emotional well-being. And one of the things we'll explore is what we know about neuroscience in terms of those conditions for optimal learning. We'll also talk about the critical role of language, how that's not just about communication, but that's also about how we access memory and process thinking. So language is really, really vital. And it's not just about vocabulary size, but that's important. It's about what we often call serve and return. And that's the conversation, the protocols of conversation that you have with a child. We'll also talk about how we develop children's emotional resilience and self-regulation. Those are fundamentally important to effective and successful learning. And we'll also talk about behaviour, managing behaviour, but also particularly encouraging children to manage their own behaviour. Thank you very much for listening, and I really look forward to talking to you again soon.